everybody, it's Frozen with Outdoor Adventures, and thanks for joining me for part 2 of the beginner hammock camping series. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about things that you should know before choosing your first hammock. Also, things that I recommend you stay away from. I am sitting in my first ever camping hammock. This is the first one I ever bought, and it was based on a friend's recommendation. I didn't do any research whatsoever. I just kind of took his word for it, and this is what I ended up with. I also have the tarp, the Atlas straps, the suspension that goes with it, and I had a bug net that I returned promptly back to REI when I first started camping. Now, you may be asking why I didn't like this hammock, and we're gonna get into all of that in this video. But first, there's nothing wrong with Eagle's Nest Outfitters. There's really not. They're just, for me, there was better options out there after I started doing some research. So let's get into it. So I think the easiest way to make this series is to go over each component of the hammock so you know what I'm referring to when I say a whoopee sling or a suspension or a ridgeline. I want you to know what I'm talking about. So first up, you obviously all know what a hammock is. You're looking at one right now. This type of hammock is an asymmetrical hammock that's a gathered end. And by the time that we're done with this video, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But first, let's go over a couple things. So here we have the hammock body. The body of a hammock is just the fabric that goes underneath you when you sit down or you lay down in the hammock. It can be made of different types of materials. This is a 1.2 Robic XL. And this Eno over here is a 70 denier parachute nylon. Like I said, there are many different types of materials that hammocks are made out of. Some are lighter than others, some are more durable than others. It just depends on what fabric you choose for your hammock. So while we're on the subject of fabric choices, there are just so many types of fabrics out there that I couldn't possibly go into them. I personally haven't tried all of them, though I have tried a lot of them, anywhere from Robic to Poly D, to Hyper D, to Hexon. I've tried all these types of fabrics, parachute nylon included. And for the most part, I tend to like a soft to medium firmness mattress. I have a memory foam mattress at home, and I just like the feeling of just sinking down into it. So for me, I like my hammocks a little bit stretchier. So I choose a material that's firm yet stretchy. And most manufacturers, at least cottage manufacturers, now these are people that are just run by 3 or 4 employees. They're like mom and pop type shops, and they're just run out of the basement of people's houses. They usually post on their website what the material is good for. Is it stretchy? Is it firm? Is it soft to the touch? Is it a little rough? It depends on exactly how you like your bed at home, and if you want to translate your bed at home into a similar mattress and a hammock, so to speak. Now, if you're a little overweight and you're worried that, oh, I'm too big for a hammock, that's not even the case. It's not even a worry. Dutchware actually has a fabric. It's called a 2.4 Hexon, and it actually supports over 400 pounds. So like I said, weight really is not an issue. If you're a bigger guy or a bigger girl and you think that's gonna be a problem, it's really not. It just depends on the fabric type you choose. So you might be asking, what do you mean 2.4 Hexon, 1.2 Robic? Okay, first of all, the name is just the fabric material that we're looking at. That 1.2 or 2.4, that's how many ounces per square yard the fabric weighs. So in a 1.2 Robic XL, it's made of a Robic XL material, and it's 1.2 ounces per square yard. Now, the weight of this is going to change, obviously, if you go in between a 10 or an 11-foot hammock, but you get the idea. Like I said, I can't possibly start to talk about each one of these fabric choices. What you need to be aware of is that the higher the number fabric, so a 1.2 versus a 2.4, the 2.4 is obviously going to have a bigger weight capacity. And like I said, cottage vendors usually list all this stuff out on their website. Another great site to check on is Ripstop by the Roll, which is kind of what you've been looking at for a little bit now. They have a ton of fabric choices, and usually they give you some information about how the material handles and feels. The next thing I want to talk about is your hammock's ridgeline. Now, there's also a tarp ridgeline We're not going to get into what that is in this video. We're going to deal with it once we start talking about tarps. But this is your hammock ridgeline. Now, what's the purpose of this, you may ask? The purpose of this is to maintain the hammock's sag, which if I zoom out, you can see that this hammock has a specific sag. Now, if you take the ridgeline off of this hammock, you'll be left with something like this. This Eno has no ridgeline whatsoever, and I'm not picking on Eno. It's just that these are two great hammocks to compare and contrast because they are completely different. Now, you can see that compared to this hammock with the ridgeline, a hammock without a ridgeline seems to spread out more. So if I were to come over here and grab the suspension, which this is a suspension, it's a way of attaching your hammock to a tree. So when I'm referring to suspension, this is what I'm talking about. This can be a whoopee sling or a cinch buckle or strap system or a daisy chain system like you're looking at right now. And we'll get into all that in a suspension video because I do not want to overwhelm you with this video. But going back to the ridgeline topic, if we take this line and tighten it to the tree, we're just going to pull it back, you can see that this hammock is pretty tight, we'll say, to the tree. There's really no sag in it. But what I want you to notice in here is what a hammock looks like without a ridgeline when it's pulled tight. Let's go back over to the other hammock and I'll do the exact same thing. When I'm doing the exact same thing, I'm pulling the hammock and I'm pulling it as tight as I possibly can. Notice that there still is sag in the hammock, and that's because the ridgeline is roughly 83% the length of your hammock body. That's a good starting number to go with whenever you're creating a ridgeline. I can take this ridgeline off of this hammock. That's not a problem. And I can add a ridgeline to that hammock. For me, I prefer the ridgeline because it helps me get a more comfortable lay. And when I'm talking about a more comfortable lay, it's just a way of laying on a diagonal in a hammock. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. So when getting into a hammock, you're just going to sit down. I like to kick my shoes off so I don't get my hammock dirty. And then a lot of people start like this, and hopefully I can show you this. They start laying like a banana, so they're sloped a lot. This is really uncomfortable, at least for me. Some people like to sleep like this. I don't know how they do it, but hey, whatever works for you. The most comfortable way, at least for me, when laying in a hammock is to lay on a diagonal, and that's what's recommended by most hammock campers. And what I mean by laying on a diagonal, I mean turning your body, stretching out the fabric, and now you can see, hopefully you can see, that I'm way more flat. My body is not shaped like a banana anymore, and I'm actually laying like I do in my bed. Now I'm pretty sure most of our beds are not shaped like a banana. I know some hospital beds can put you in that position, but it's not the most comfortable position to sleep in. If you're a side sleeper, the same thing applies. The ridgeline that we were talking about earlier makes this really easy because it adds some sag into your hammock without your body being in there. Like I showed you before, you can tighten this up fully to the tree and you'll still have approximately the same amount of sag as you would loose on the tree like it is right now. So we talked about the hammock, how to lay in the hammock properly, about the ridgeline, and very briefly what a suspension is. Now I want to talk about a symmetrical hammock versus an asymmetrical hammock. So what you're looking at now is asymmetrical. It has dedicated head and foot ends. And what I mean by asymmetrical, you can see that the zipper comes almost to a point, and this hammock actually has a pull out for your head end and your foot end, so you can get an asymmetrical lay. So this helps you lay even flatter than a symmetrical hammock. Now, some people don't like asymmetrical hammocks. They prefer just to have your standard symmetrical hammock, which is what we're going to take a look at next. For me, I like symmetrical hammocks, but I sleep better in asymmetrical hammocks like the one you see in front of you. So let's take a look at a symmetrical hammock. So this is a symmetrical hammock, and what I mean by that is if you cut the hammock in half, both sides would be a mirror image of each other. So I can put my feet this way. Again, we're laying on a diagonal and not like a banana. I can put my feet this way, or I can spin the whole way around and do the same thing on the other side. Not only do you need to figure out if you're going to get a symmetrical hammock or an asymmetrical hammock, depending on what works for you best, it's personal preference here, you also need to figure out what length and width you're going to get. I know, a lot of stuff, right? As a general rule of thumb, the taller you are, the longer you're going to want your hammock. For me, I really enjoy a 10-foot hammock because I'm 5'6". I'd say anything over probably 5'8" and above, you want to start looking at an 11-foot hammock. This hammock that I'm currently sitting in, this Eno, is a 9-foot 4-inch hammock. And that's one of the reasons why I switched to a 10-foot hammock, because I developed this thing called calf ridge that we're going to take a look at in just a second here. Now, the calf ridge you don't notice until way into the night, after you've probably already fallen asleep. Some people, some taller people might even be able to notice it immediately, but it's very uncomfortable to sleep like that. So we're going to try to show you calf ridge right now so you can see what the heck I'm talking about. Okay, I think you can see me. This is the area that I want to focus on right here. So as we're swinging over and we're laying on our diagonal, hopefully you guys can see this right here. So I'm, like I said, on a diagonal, and right here underneath my calf is a fold in the hammock. That's just what happens with gathered end hammocks. Now, there is a type of hammock that avoids this issue completely called a bridge hammock. I've never laid in one, so I can't give my experience on it. But for the lighter gathered end hammocks, this is calf ridge. When this piece of material folds over on itself and digs into your calf. Now, I can fix this by moving up with the hammock, but then I have the same issue with my head end. So I need to kind of position myself on a wider angle. However, the width of this is extremely wide, so I end up sinking into the hammock and going back into the calf ridge right here. So this is a real problem with shorter hammocks like an Eno. Now, I think their shortest hammock is, I believe, right under 9 feet. And a lot of people sleep in them. I, for one, can't though. I just don't feel comfortable. You might be able to. I'm not knocking this company at all because they are getting the word out about hammock camping. But like I said, for me, I'm just not comfortable in them. So let me go back to the asymmetrical hammock and I'll show you that calf ridge is pretty much a non-existent thing in that model. Now this, you can see, has a dedicated foot end because it's, like I said, asymmetrical. So I can shove my foot in there and I'm laying completely flat. You can see the calf ridge is non-existent. It doesn't exist right here. I have plenty of room underneath my calves. Now, if this was an 11-foot hammock, it would be even less apparent. But for me, I, like I said, prefer a 10-foot hammock just based on my height. So this is extremely, extremely comfortable, and this is what works for me. Another thing you have to look at is width. I think most hammocks come standard at about a 60 to 63 inch width these days. I'm not sure what that hammock is over there. I know it's a double nest, so it's probably a little bit wider. This, for instance, you can completely customize. This is a dream hammock, and I customize it to 61. That's 1 inch wider than I feel that I need. 60 works perfect. 61 works even better. If you want to get a flatter lay, that's definitely an option, is to go with a wider hammock. But that brings me to another topic here. Now, when I said double nest, that means 2 people are supposed to be able to sleep comfortably together. Now, I'm going to say this, and I think a lot of people beat around the bush on this topic, but you cannot sleep 2 people comfortably in a hammock unless it's a bridge hammock. That I don't have any experience with, like I said. But in a gathered end hammock, like the one in front of you and the one over there, you just simply cannot sleep 2 people comfortably at the same time. just get 2 hammocks. Now, with that being said, you can share a tarp so you don't get rained on, and you can have 1 tarp as long as it's wide enough. But I really would discourage use of 2 people in 1 hammock. Let's talk about another hot topic here. When we're talking about insulation, again, this is going to come up in another video later on in the series, but we're talking about keeping conduction away from your body while you're sleeping on the ground. Because what happens is, as you know, you probably, if you have done any camping whatsoever, you probably have a sleeping pad or a sleeping mat, and that insulates you from the conduction of the ground. A hammock is no different, except that you have to worry about convection from the air. So the cool air underneath you or around you will actually rob your body of its heat. And around the, I'd say the 65-degree mark is when I start to feel a little uncomfortable and need something under me. Now in the summertime, sometimes I rock, no insulation under me. I don't bring my sleeping pad out at all, or my underquilt, which we're gonna get into in a little bit later in the series. But I wanted to touch on that. What is an underquilt? Do you need an underquilt? And can you just use your existing sleeping pad in your hammock? Yes, you can use your existing sleeping pad in your hammock. In fact, I know several people who don't use an underquilt at all just because of the expense and the cost of that underquilt, and they just stick to a sleeping bag and sleeping pad in your hammock. This gets into a comfort issue. There are different types of hammocks. There's a single layer and a double layer. Double layer usually is recommended for heavier people, but it's also recommended for people that want to use their existing sleeping pad because you can slip it between 2 layers. Now, I just sold a hammock that I could show you that was a double layer, but if you picture 2 pieces of fabric, and I believe I have some B-roll on this, you can actually take the 2 pieces of fabric, separate them, and slide your sleeping pad between them. This pretty much stops the sleeping pad from moving around, though it will take some adjustment. Now, with an underquilt, which is what I use, it's basically just a sleeping bag that goes underneath you. In fact, let's take a look at one right now. So this is an underquilt. Now I have it up so you guys can see it better because I know we're dealing with black on black fabric here. But this basically connects to your suspension. In this case, we're using a cinch buckle. Again, we're going to get into all this in some future videos. But what I have here, it's just some pieces of shock cord that are run through a channel sewn into the material, and then I just have a little S-beaner. In fact, this is a Night Eyes number 2 beaner, I believe, and it's just connected to, like I said, my suspension. What does this do? This allows you to have insulation underneath of your hammock. So not underneath your body, where if you were using a sleeping bag, it would compress that insulation under you, like I said in my beginner backpacking series. This would go under the hammock, so it would not be compressed, and it would actually hold your warmth and keep you warm at night. Now, this quilt is rated to 30 degrees, this underquilt. There are different temperature ratings on underquilts, all the way I've seen from -10 to 50 degrees. It just depends on what climate you live in and how warm you want to be and what temperatures you're going to be using your quilt in. When choosing your hammock, you need to figure out what you want to use it for. So do you want to just use it for lounging around your backyard, or do you actually want to use it for some serious backpacking trips? Now, if your answer is the latter, then you probably want some bug protection. Now on this one, the bug net is actually sewn to the hammock, and then there's a zipper on the other side that I can use to zip myself in at night, and that will keep all the bugs away from me. Another thing you need to think about is rain protection. Eventually it's gonna rain, and right now there is no protection from the rain, so you're gonna have to look at a tarp. So everybody, I really hoped that helped get the information needed so that you can start doing your own research and buying your first hammock. Now, for some additional reading, I have a great book that I recommend. Now, I'm not paid by this company to do this book at all. This is by Derek Hansen. It's called The Ultimate Hang. he just released a newer version called the Ultimate Hang 2. Even after hammock camping for a year and a half, I ended up picking up this book and I learned a ton. It has a ton of information about everything that I'm going to be talking about, and I highly, highly suggest the read. You can find this on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description box, as well as some hammock vendors that I very, very highly recommend. Thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you in the next one.